Okay, welcome back. We've decided that it was
December, yeah,
since we did this.
It's been a bit.
And a lot's happened.
A lot's happened, but in the same time, we've chatted about this over the last 6 months. Do we need to have another one? And there was so much of unknown, but also just, it's nothing worth actually talking about. But now there's maybe some stuff to talk about.
Well, I was thinking about, two things. One, how are you staying in the loop? Like, what's your source for keeping up? Because the amount of just stuff coming out on a weekly basis.
That was not my social media.
Thought was noise versus signal, because there's so much of this. Our discussion has been, how much of this do we need to talk to people about? Because it's happening so quick that yesterday's news is irrelevant at this point.
Yeah.
So there's two thoughts. Like, how do we keep up with how much is here? Where's your source of information?
You bet. We had this conversation last year. I'm like, hey, I think that we need subscriptions to the major actual real estate news sources, because there's social media and there's the people that want to be influencers and the talking heads, and we won't name names, but some just drive me nuts. But then there's some other really great ones. Inman.
Like rhymes with Arid Pains?
Yeah, maybe rhymes with that. Okay.
He's been vocal.
He's been very vocal. Him, James Dwiggins, who owned Next Home that just got purchased, obviously. He's very, very loud on, he's their CEO, very loud on social media as well. And not to say that they don't sometimes say great things. It's just, I sometimes wonder how much of it is for the entertainment and the views and the likes. And so
real estate's now gotten into clickbait.
It has. And it has, because it works. And because there's, 1.4 million of us out there wondering what's going on. And so they know that they have an audience.
I want to say that that's where a lot of it ends, though, is the 1.4 million, because I just think that no one else actually gives a crap about this.
Yeah, and that's, I think, we found that out through even buyer agency and the settlement and all of the stuff that was going on there. We thought it was such a big deal because it influenced our daily lives, and most of our buyers, sellers, even the public are like, what happened, and does it really change anything? And
I have to sign this form now.
Yeah, maybe change things for the better, but that's about it. So Inman, actually, as much as they can be a little bit of a pot stirrer, they have great stuff. T360 does real estate news, and I would say they're the best of the best. Housing Wire has another one, but those three kind of news sources do a very good job of presenting both sides and getting in guest columnists that have an opinion, but also and
then you got to put your thinking hat on, because each of them bring a lens to this whole thing.
They do,
and you got to recognize who you're reading and what their take on things are.
Which is good. I'm glad, because like I said, I read just an article this morning that helped maybe put things into perspective of the side that I haven't necessarily agreed with, and maybe still don't, but at least read it. And I'm like, okay, I'm glad I'm seeing that now. It's not a Fox News and MSN News differences. Sometimes the columnists are much more in the middle, but you still see a slant. So T360's real estate news is without a doubt the best, but the others provide just additional, I think, perspectives that help us figure out, and this is kind of what you've always said, is there anything that actually is going to matter to our agents? We talk about, does it matter to the public, and does it even matter to our agents? And sometimes yes, a lot of times no. And so we filter and figure out, what do we need to bring into a podcast? What do we need to bring into team meetings that's going to affect them or their clients?
Well, I'm going to be honest. Selfishly, I'm kind of grateful that you're reading all those and that I'm spending less time on them. It actually creates a very healthy, and maybe we touched on this before, there's a healthy buffer. I'm able to focus my energy, thoughts, focus on what is right for our organization while you're out really absorbing all the changes that are going on. The nature of this discussion is really just to catch up for everyone on what's happened in about 6 months, most of which is noise, some of which is not, some of which impacts our people, most of which, frankly, is just because it's in flux.
Right.
And I think that this is all going to land somewhere, but nothing's landing right now.
And even the stuff that is landing, when we look at it, a lot of it aligns with what we have
already done,
trained our agents to do, because like, this is taking the high road. This is putting relationships over transactions. And we look at it and it's kind of fun, because like, this is what we do anyway. And so when you see things that are being forced by law or policy, and we're like, well, that's just what we do. It's kind of fun to know that we're, again, just ahead of the game because we care about doing what's right. And so that part's fun, but there's also things that it's just good to be in the know without having to, like you said, filter all of it. So for our agents to be like, okay, this is what they're talking about when they say, blank, when they talk MRED, when they talk the portal wars.
Nobody but you knew what MRED was 6 to 12 months ago.
For sure. You're right. Right.
And now it's a major deal and everyone's posting about it. So, okay.
Yeah.
You sent me notes on things you wanted to at least cover today. I took those and totally transformed them.
Good.
I was trying to think of a framework for this discussion that isn't just like multiple seemingly unrelated headlines, multiple lawsuits, multiple legislative potential changes. I try to frame this, and I think I might be right. I think I could be wrong. I don't care if you follow my framework or not. But here's how I'm thinking this through, and then you can be the subject matter expert here. Tell me what you're thinking, what you've read, what you've seen. For everyone listening, again, the goal is just to keep you guys in the loop, but there's really nothing for our agents to be focused on right now. Right. We'll tell you guys when it's time to act. We've done a decent job at that in the past. But here's how I summarize this. I see 3 intertwined battles going on right now.
Okay.
They're overlapping, sort of connected, but also in a way, there's 3 different channels of things going on right now. The first is this whole clear cooperation and private listings war. We can give that a name if we want.
The one that they keep leaning into, which I like, is just seller choice.
We're calling this the seller choice.
That's seller choice.
Which is an interesting, it's kind of like everything. If you watch a headline on CNN versus Fox News, it's going to be the same event stated 2 different ways.
Yeah. Yep.
Seller choice is a self-serving way to describe that, because that certainly makes it sound like it's obviously good for sellers. There could be an alternate case for that. Okay, sure. Then the second one is the Zillow versus Compass sort of battle. Those are connected.
For sure. Yep.
But then there's this whole, connected to that, this MRED antitrust war that's going on. Right. So I think that's connected but separate.
Yep.
And then the final is this portal war that is almost going on as a symptom of all
this. It's a consequence of all of that, for sure.
They're all trying to figure out, because these are businesses that are trying to make money, whether it's Realtor, Homes, Redfin, Zillow. They're all just trying to figure out, how do we play now into this state of chaos that's going on, and figure out how we get not get a piece of the pie, but fill the gaps that are being created in this new structure. So I'm going to try and address those in those 3 hats.
I think that works really well.
You break it when you want to break it.
And there's a lot of interplay, but I think that's real estate in general.
So help me with private listings. We'll call it the seller choice debate to be, I don't know, generous. Why don't we just start real quick for anyone that needs to be caught up? Origins of clear cooperation, a very, very basic synopsis of clear cooperation, and why clear cooperation is in the, it's only like a 4 or 5 year old policy.
Right.
But it started, why?
So it started pre-pandemic, and most of the time when people assume, talk clear cooperation, they're assuming that was a result of this wild market that we had where people weren't having an opportunity to see listings before they went pending. But this was actually put into play before the pandemic, when we were shifting from what we saw in 2012 to really 2016 of a stabilized post-housing crisis market to a market where interest rates were coming down, prices were going up, not like we saw during the pandemic, but there was appreciation. And so we just saw that there was more competition for existing inventory.
Reducing inventory.
Yeah, we were seeing that there wasn't as much inventory, and the bigger issue was, and this comes back to a lot of the conversations that we have when it comes to seller choice, was complaints from real estate brokerages, especially brokerages that weren't listing heavy. So if you weren't had the huge market share, brokerages were starting to push back, but also buyers were really pushing back and saying, wait a minute, do I have to go directly to the list agent? Because if I don't go to the list agent, we're seeing so many properties that are going pending before they're ever even shown on the MLS. And if that means I have to go to the listing agent every time, I'm going to go to the listing agent.
So let me try reframe that real quick. It's 2017, 18, 19. You've got a bunch of agents that are listing stuff, and they're selling a lot of it before it ever hits the market.
Absolutely.
And they're doing it not because they're scoundrels, but because there's a listing deficiency. The market's moving at a very, very rapid pace, and they've just got this advantage.
Right.
And some channels are opening up where they're like, well, I'll just promote this property myself real quick and double dip.
Yeah.
Somewhat innocently, somewhat corruptly. It's it's in that context that clear cooperation comes up as a solution for this, and essentially states.
Yes, it states that within either 24 hours, one business day, whatever your local association decided, of public marketing. So the minute that you did anything more than told one of your own clients about it, publicly marketed was putting it on Facebook, a sign, putting it onto a personal website. Anytime that you marketed the property, it has to be available to other members of your MLS to be aware that it's for sale. So it doesn't mean that it has to be available to all the public to know. Clear cooperation just says the other participants of your MLS have to be aware that this property is for sale and have to be able to show it.
Okay, so nuts and bolts. When that went down, what was Compass's involvement in as a catalyst to that at that time? Because a lot's changed now. This is several years ago.
Yep. Immediate pushback, especially because, and we don't see it in our market because Compass doesn't have the influence that it has, but you get out to West Coast where Compass was very much, especially in California, had a huge amount of the listing inventory. And they're like, wait a minute, we should be able to sell this any way we want. If I have a listing and I have a buyer for that listing and they want to put an offer in the first 5 minutes that that's on the market, why should I have to tell my seller that, we have to get it into the MLS at all?
So sorry to go back, but the way you're framing that story is interesting to me because the way you're framing it is that Compass reacts to clear cooperation. My recollection, which probably is wrong, was that Compass was a catalyst to the conversation ever happening. Am I wrong about that?
You're saying that because of
Compass's like
practices, yes. No, you're 100% right there. So that because of, and again, Compass wasn't the only brokerage that we saw. I mean, this was nationwide where we were seeing a significant number of properties were already pending before they were ever actually available to the public.
Our agents
us too, right?
They just had better infrastructure for it. Their software that they had built, their program allowed for
an internal MLS,
great access within their agent database. Okay, so they're both a catalyst to clear cooperation and an immediate responder to
and opponent of it.
Okay, because this is not fair, this is stupid. So the fight starts early there at that point.
Yeah, I mean immediately. So we're 7 years ago. Okay. This pushback of shouldn't my seller get to choose how they want us to market their house? And that's been the conversation, obviously, and
then the inventory only gets worse,
right?
Post-COVID, and here we are now. And Compass has obviously expanded its footprint. They've now brought in the largest brands in the organization. And now the fight, it's almost like what they were doing was working to create enough market share and bandwidth to be able to have
the influence and power they needed
to start swinging the bat again.
Yes. Yep.
And obviously we're a CIH company. And so I don't know if we're across any lines.
Yeah.
What I'm interested in is then, so when PLN, right?
Yes. Yep.
This is a new term, private listing network. No one's really used this language until the last few months. I presume that this is the language that Compass has been using internally for quite some time. Yep. But now the whole world is about the distinction between clear cooperation and what it's served to accomplish and the notion that a private listing network should be able to, Compass's argument, right? So, why don't you start there? What's a PLN?
I was just say to easily define it. So let's go to the least basic is a pocket listing. That's where a seller says, "Hey, I don't really want you to list my property, but if
most basic." Did you say least basic?
Sorry, most basic. Most basic, like from my perspective, like the least safe from a listing perspective, because this is where a seller says, "Hey, if you've got somebody, I don't want you to list this, but if you've got somebody, be willing to let you show." All right, so it's almost like it's FSBO, but they don't want it to be FSBO. But if you've got a buyer, bring them, and I'm going to probably represent the seller and buyer.
Which by definition is not a pocket listing in legal terms.
Correct.
It's simply communication between two parties that, hey, I would be open.
Yeah, for sure, right? And it's, conversation. How many times have we heard it in our lives? Like, well, everything's for sale.
Well, it's what we do for a living.
Yeah, we should communicate and connect with people. And this is, again, comes back to not everybody wants to be in a listing agreement and have their property on the market even. They just want you as the local, especially if you've got a large footprint, like they want you to know this isn't on the market, but it's for sale. So that's pocket. And again, the downfall is you might tell your buyer about it, but your buyer might tell their friend, and then their friend goes directly to the seller. And now if we don't have a great relationship, we might have just been cut out from the entire transaction, even though we were the ones that kind of helped propagate it. So that's pocket. Then it goes into we've got private and office exclusive. And Angela and I had a really good conversation about this the other day because The private piece of it is we actually have a listing agreement in place. But in this instance, we're looking at how do we get it out so that other agents know about it. And that's where a private listing network comes into effect, where an office exclusive just means we're listing it. It's staying in-house. We can tell agents in our walls about it, but we really need to keep it here because it's an office exclusive listing. The private listing network is where it gets really interesting. And this is what Compass was doing for their entire franchise was, hey, we've got an internal MLS. So before it ever goes into whatever MLS platform your local association uses, we've got one that's internal. You're going to enter it into this, right? So enter into this database that we've created, and agents, especially if we have a lot of agents and we have a big market share, you're going to be able to see what's available before anybody else does. So, good news there, you're going to know about other properties that the seller doesn't want marketed yet. So you can then tell your buyers that, hey, I've got a property that nobody else really knows about, but I can get you into it. Looks really good from the list side where sellers are like, I don't want this on the market.
Hey, when you imagined that for the first time, did you imagine a listing contract being executed prior to the input into the PLN, into their system?
Yeah.
So there's still a contract. It's still for sale. It's just a phased marketing plan.
100%.
This is how they communicate it. Phase one, we'll share it with our network.
Yep.
You don't need to have the downside of days on market and potential price reductions. Phase two. So I just want to clarify that it's not like you can stick it into this thing without a marketing.
You have to have an agreement.
Contract.
Yeah, you have to have a listing agreement in place, right? Because because we've moved on to just telling people that it might be for sale. To now, I'm actually representing you and I'm sharing it. I'm marketing it.
But this was all within one organization.
Right. This was just Compass.
And Compass wasn't like Century 21, meaning multiple independently owned and operated. This was one brokerage, one not just brand, one physical company.
Yeah.
So they're sharing it within this PLN. You're saying that's the third or fourth tier. I don't know where you were in your tiers.
Yeah. And that's where it's interesting. That kind of becomes I would say third tier. The office exclusive is just where I tell everybody in-house about it. Like I have to submit it to the MLS, but other agents don't get to know about it. PLN gets interesting because depending on what local association you are a part of and what MLS they use, there might actually be a network of agents now that get to see this property, and it can technically be accessed by your clients that have signed into an agreement to see these properties. So now there's another way to make agents aware of it that maybe aren't even in your brokerage, that doesn't enact CCP, where you're like, oh, now I have to make it so that it's fed to the IDX, because that was Compass's pushback on this. Is CCP is going to feed it to everybody's website. It's going to feed it to all of the big portals, and they didn't want that. And so that's where it's gotten really interesting is they've now expanded across all of these different brands under CIH, but also joined some MLS associations that also are willing to allow private networks. Compass is positioning itself to say, hey, like we should be able to share these outside of just CIH now. We should be able to, if that's what our seller wants us to do. And it's an interesting thing that 6 months ago we hadn't even really dug into, because we're like, you know what, like not something we'd be interested in. And even if our agents aren't interested on the list side, we're probably going to be interested on the buy side to have access to these listings that aren't available to the public through PLNs.
Okay, so I'm intentionally leaving Zillow out of the conversation for now.
Yep.
Because it adds a whole nother layer.
Does,
so I'm still sticking with just another way to think about the first category of this is clear cooperation versus PLN is really an MLS debate. This is a NAR policy debate. We, on the one hand, believe it should always, as a first step, be shared with everyone. And you've got this player in the marketplace, but a lot of people that probably think this way saying, well, why should we have to be constrained by that policy if we have a giant network of our own people and we want to share it with them? Shouldn't the seller choose? In a hypothetical world, a seller could maybe get a discounted commission if it sells within the PLN. Well, who are you to say that we have to do it through your association, this one association of which you and me are members, but it's the one association that rules them all and gets to dictate how everyone does business. This is not fair. So I guess my question here is, if we're just keeping it at the sort of NAR MLS versus PLN Compass freedom seller choice debate, where do you, how do you sit on this whole thing?
I'm still in a huge majority of the time that it's in the best interest of the seller for their property to be marketed to the most amount of people as quickly as possible. But I mentioned to you earlier, started to read enough things now where that's not always the case. And the other big piece you talked about, the phases of, the 3-phase thing, is the minute that I entered into the MLS, my days on market starts accumulating. And maybe sellers wanted to test the price, and we realized we overpriced this thing because the market shifted dramatically in 2 weeks because of, whatever happened globally. Now we're in a position where markets slow down and we're going to have to do a price drop, and everybody's going to see that. And so that's part of the Compass conversation is, if we need to test the market, isn't it better to test that within our own walls of a private listing network to see, is this the right price? And
why should our seller be constrained by this association's protocols that's really there more to protect its association members than it is the end client?
And that's the pushback that obviously, and not just Compass, I think several organizations, brokerages have said, is this about what's right for your members, or is this about how you protect your association to make sure that you have membership? And so but
the problem with that is it's layered, and
very layered.
The individuals, our parent company, yelling the loudest about PLN or seller's choice, also have a lot to gain financially. Right. We've got to call a spade when you get to double dip on all these things. Yeah. That's certainly pretty financially convenient for you that serves seller's choice.
Right.
It doesn't mean that the seller's being harmed. It just means we've got to be honest about the multiple layers of motivation.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the piece I pushed back on it first when we first had this conversation.
What's this really about?
Yeah. What's this really? Is this really about dual agency and getting to keep, or appointed agency, but getting to keep both sides in-house? If that's what this is about, then I don't know if I can ever come along. But if the whole point is sellers should be able to have the right, and some policies that, and we know we're in a giant class action lawsuit, some policies that have come down become a little antiquated really, really quickly. And so some policies that NAR has, or the state has, or the local has, sometimes need to be rethought of, are we doing what's best for our members and for the public, or are we being protectionist of the biggest trade association in the United States? And so
which is it?
A piece of that. As someone that is very
heavily involved,
but also proponent of local, state, national, because it is what allows us to make sure that we're having policies in effect that do actually benefit us and the consumers. There are a lot of times where I'm like, we're holding on to something a little too long that's actually harming everybody. And so it's one of those. Clear cooperation policy in theory is great because it would be a rough market, and we would probably have questions from a lot of consumers if we saw everything going pending before anybody even knew that it was for sale. And so at least clear cooperation is creating those opportunities for people to say, hey, this needs to be available for people to at least know it's out there, because they may have a buyer that's willing to pay more, to have better terms, and to not expose that could be a problem. But to not allow sellers to decide that, it's their home. They should get to decide it as long as they're fully made aware of what the options are.
Yeah, it's possible that there's no Hitler in this story.
I don't.
And everyone was actually just trying to. It's not like the MLS or NAR was trying to be super protectionist and create a monopoly, and they were just truly trying to protect the fact that it is probably in the best interest of most sellers to have maximum exposure in most situations. It's like any other bureaucracy. At some point, the rules start to bend in on themselves and create restrictions that sometimes are actually cumbersome or counterproductive.
Need to be a little more flexible.
But it's the same on the other side. This PLN thing, you can look at them and go Compass is just trying to own the market, buy everybody up, and then double dip on everything. It's probably more nuanced than that. And when you spend time with Robert and just hear his story about his mom and how he grew up and how he got into the real estate business, it's very easy to be... It's pretty endearing, and it seems genuine, and you can see that there's an honest, sincere fight there for, why do these regulations have to define how we conduct business in every single one of these MLSs around the nation? It's possible that all these people are actually halfway decent. I'm not applying that to all the players, because I think that there are some more. It seems like there are. I'm not as gracious towards Zillow. Let me put it that way. But I don't think the MLS or NAR were working to create a monopoly, or restrictive practices.
Yeah, and we've talked about this because it's NAR has been referred to as organized real estate, almost like the mob here. And what makes me laugh is I'm like, yes, Like that is what they are. They are.
But it was an intentionally innocent organization.
Right. But
maybe that's too generous.
Yes. Because there are obviously in all of these conversations, there's underlying, I think, thoughts that everybody has everybody has a motive, right? Like, what's their ulterior motive in doing this? Why would NAR fight so hard for this policy? Well, there are a lot of small independent brokerages across the entire United States that make up the membership of NAR. And if you have a private listing network that's only made up of large brokerages, does that harm small independent brokerages? Absolutely would, right? They don't have access to listings anymore. So where do buyers go? Buyers go to listing agents and agents that are with large franchises because they have access to all of these other listings that small independents don't. And there's a lot of small independents. And so that was part of it, is how do we protect the smaller brokerages that aren't a part of this? Do we need to have a policy in effect? Also, how do we protect consumers that don't want to go to a listing agent because they're like, I don't want dual agency because I want someone that isn't connected to that brokerage to represent me. But if it's already pending before I ever know that it's available, I have to go to that listing agent. So it was an interesting complex
that
play.
Sounds like an innocent, well-intentioned
right. And I think in concept
that they were trying to solve for.
Yep.
So okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
Because I think we're starting to touch on some of the motivations, but let's make it more complicated first.
Why not?
If that's the seller choice debate, clear cooperation versus PLNs, then let's get into the Zillow Compass thing. So maybe you could explain where we're at with all the lawsuits.
Yeah. And I'm going to rewind just really quickly on this, because what's really interesting, and this is the part that I struggled to comprehend, and I even questioned you about it. I'm like, hey, when you were in meetings with Mike Meadler and with Robert Refkin, like, how did this comply with clear cooperation policy? How can you have a private listing network that other agents can see your listings and potentially consumers can see your listings, but it's not available through an IDX feed? Like, how is this in compliance? And it took me longer than I expected to kind of put the pieces together of private listing networks are in compliance because clear cooperation says that within your 24 hours or one business day, it's available to whoever belongs to your MLS. And so private listing networks, the newest version of it, where like MRED and what we're seeing across the country is in compliance because everybody that belongs to that MLS gets to see these because they're part of the MLS, which means they have access to private listing networks. So that was the part that I couldn't put together forever. Like, how are these compliant? And they're compliant because every single realtor that is a member of that MLS can see those. And that's the requirement through clear cooperation.
That wasn't true with Compass's PLN.
So Compass's was because it was just Compass.
Just their company.
But now these are expanding to be more than just Compass PLNs. And I'm like, wait a minute. If somebody from Compass, but
how is it a
CT1,
PLN if everyone in the MLS can see it? What's P about it? That's just an LN.
Because anywhere else, once it's fed into the MLS, it
goes public.
It either is fed public or it's available in a capacity that you are you're. And this is why we have that delayed exempt marketing, the delayed IDX mess, was trying to appease Compass, who just said like that didn't actually fix anything. It just made it more convoluted. But that was the thought is it still private if every agent can see it? And the thought is yes, because agents can see it, but it's not available to the public, but it doesn't have to be for clear cooperation because it's cooperation between agents. And that was just my struggle to put that together.
Well, you just made a struggle for me.
Yeah.
That doesn't
I know.
Even computes. My little assessment of this in the back of my brain after watching those guys explain their thing is that number one, it's sincere. I think they actually believe the problem is their fight isn't just with clear cooperation. It's the Zillow fight is personal. Mm-hmm. And it's because of conversations that have gone on behind closed doors that I think if we were there, we might also be pissed off about. So it is a vendetta of a sort now. But it's also that I think that there is how do I describe this right? The zeitgeist, the milieu, the general thinking that they come from is that of they are a brokerage. They're a nationwide brokerage. And so their PLN was built for them and their agents. Right. They just happen to be around the country. in the absorption of Century 21, Coldwell Banker, etc., under now CIH, the attempt to transliterate, to expand that same thinking across all of these independent brands, each of which within each brand are hundreds or thousands of independently operated brokerages.
Individual brokerages.
It's a fundamentally different game at 3 different tiers.
Yes.
Not only are we all the same company, we're now different brands, and within each brand, we're independent companies.
Right.
So the notion of a private listing network, given the infrastructure that you and I have seen, I think you've seen their back office thing and their little PLN. You saw a brief preview of that. It's marvelous. It's fantastic.
Incredible.
To be able to sit with a buyer, go in there and go like, here's all the active listings. So also here's several hundred others that are within our network. It's a marvelous idea when you're Compass to play that out across all of these independently owned and operated brokerages. That's where my compute system starts to fail. I run out of RAM and I'm like, well, how is this compliant with clear cooperation?
And that's
to me the more interesting question, because that's what they are endeavoring to do. And if our PLN as Century 21 Signature Real Estate in Iowa is going to be our capacity to share these things with each other, I'm like, well, that's of no value. If it's with whatever, Coldwell Banker or Better Homes, I suppose I see some value, but still not significant amounts of it. So I'm interested to see how that plays out over time.
Right.
Whether that value proposition holds any value in most markets. And if some of this is why I'm like noise versus signal, because I don't know how much of this even matters while these guys are spreading everybody's blood all over the street. And my concern is how much policy is going to be, kind of like you said, the 3 tiers of listings that came out with delayed showing. And we created as an MLS, as a national association, a whole bunch of protocols for various types of listing input as a Band-Aid to this dispute that was going on, none of which today I don't think anyone actually cares about. It was just more noise, right?
Yeah, it absolutely was.
So are we thinking about that differently?
No, I don't think so.
Those are 2 different categories of this problem.
Right. And you mentioned, I think, something that we'll get into in a little bit that's intriguing is like what policies are going to now be thrown in to try to counterbalance, right? So we threw some Band-Aids on, but like what else is happening to try to appease small independent brokerages, but also appease your large Compasses and your EXPs? There's a lot of affiliations, collaborations right now to try to make the players happy.
I can't keep up every week.
It's
okay,
wild.
Let's jump there. So Zillow, well, why don't you explain the lawsuits? Not all of them, but like the principal lawsuit that's going on between Zillow, what prompted it and what's the status?
And so there's actually been more than one. The most recent that we were talking about is that Compass more or less had joined an MLS, and
let's name it.
MRED.
Okay, which is the Chicagoland.
Is most of Illinois.
Okay.
All the way down to...
They don't like calling it Chicagoland.
They don't like calling it Chicagoland
It's now
anymore.
Illinois, but spreading over other borders.
It's already come into Iowa through Quad City, so we have agents.
What's its value proposition? Why would you join MRED?
You bet. So, piece one of it is what we've talked about for a long time is that these listings, this data is shared with everybody that's a member of it. So for this, so I'm in Eastern Illinois, Western Illinois, or whatever. I'm bordering Iowa or some random. Why do I need to be on MRED? It's the same reason why a lot of our agents that are CIBR agents also belong to DMAR, because DMAR agents will
There's some overlap,
cross these imaginary borders. But the bigger piece of this, and this is where it gets really interesting with MRED, is their thought is like, number one, the more of us that belong to the same MLS, we should be able to bring costs down, but should be able to provide more for the members. So it's not just cost savings, but providing more opportunities. And MRED's other big piece is, even if you don't want to belong to us, like what if we do a data share where your MLS shares your listings with us and we share our listings with you, so that we don't have these isolated MLSs anymore, and it starts to become more of a bigger MLS, which works well into their favor now that offer of compensation is not on there anymore. So MRED really took off at the right time.
So I took us off track.
Yeah,
so my bad. Compass joins MRED.
Yeah, so Compass partners with MRED and
partners.
Yep, partners, and more or less says like, hey, we'll we'll cover the cost of any Compass agent that wants to join MRED. Like we'll pay for you to join.
All of our stuff will show up on MRED.
Because then all of those listings will show.
Including the private listing network stuff? Or?
Yes. So MRED already had a private listing network in place for members of MRED. So that was appealing to Compass.
So why does Compass want their PLN showing up on MRED?
Because of the accessibility to all of Chicagoland. Because of,
is this just part of their larger play to overthrow Zillow's positioning as the lead syndicator of real estate information?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that's I think this is their way to affiliate with as many and then influence the decisions of those. I think that's, if I was going to say, like, why would Compass even be joining MRED? Is it a PLN thing? No, it's aligning myself in the biggest cities across the United States to have more influence in the policies so that our 3-phase marketing is something that's allowed if sellers choose.
Who knows? And who knows that they know? I mean, I think sometimes we just do things because we do things. But if you look at why they absorbed, not Realogy.
Anywhere.
Yeah. I'm still a Realogy guy. I grew up with Realogy. Why absorb that? It could be, because we want to grow. It could also be, because we want to have more girth in order to accomplish the agenda that we've been working on the whole time. I don't know, but you can look at the mixed motivations of what their strategic play is. MRED seems to me like it's more what we just described.
I think strategic.
So they join MRED. And because it's really about their desire to overthrow Zillow, Zillow reacts and responds and
And this is a conversation from a year ago.
No, MRED reacts and actually immediately cuts off Zillow's feed.
Yeah, it says to them, if you're not going to display all of our listings, right? Because this was the conversation from a year ago.
Zillow's got a policy that says that any listing that gets listed that doesn't immediately go to the MLS is a first step. If it goes to a PLN first,
or even just an office exclusive, right? So some local associations require that your office exclusives be entered into the MLS, right? So nobody sees them except agents in your office, right?
And Zillow says if you do that, any of these pre-marketing options, it not just won't show up, it'll never show up.
Never. And the only way that listing will ever show up on Zillow isn't if he cancels and goes to a new agent. It's if it cancels and goes to a new brokerage.
Meaning you can't just move it within Compass to another Compass agent. It has to get relisted by someone else.
Yep.
So Zillow reacts and says, okay, we're going to play your chess game and we're going to cut the feed. And then as a function of that, Compass sues Zillow?
So kind of flip that. So Zillow has this policy, listing access standards that says you need to make it available to everybody right away. And MRED changes
the feed to Zillow.
And MRED says, well, then we're not going to feed to you because you're not following our bylaws, which they'd changed to say that we have options where office exclusive, private listing, whatever we want to do, it might not show up right away. And if you're not going to eventually show our listings, then you don't get to have any of our listings. And so overnight cut, an incredible amount of Illinois listings. And quickly a judge comes in and says, hey, like MRED, you need to give back the listings. Hey, Zillow, you have to show every listing, regardless of whether it went into a private listing network or an office exclusive. Like you don't get to.
At what level was this? State level?
This was at the state. Yeah. So state level, but at the same time, like bigger picture pieces, because these conversations aren't just happening in Illinois. They're also happening across the country.
So what's the status now? Do those feeds all get reinstated?
So they all got reinstated. Just temporarily, right? So an injunction where the judge is like, MRED, give them the feed. Zillow, show every listing. So neither party really won, but it was great because if you listen to someone from Zillow talk about it, Zillow won. If you lost somebody from MRED and Compass, like they won, but really neither group got what they wanted because it's still in the court right now. Really just saying, can Zillow have a rule in place that says they aren't going to eventually put our listings on there? Or is that a restriction of our seller's choice to do whatever they want in the way that we market their property?
So let's see if I can pull this off, or maybe you can pull this off. I'd like to try Steelman. Do you use that language, Steelman?
No.
Straw man is where you build up somebody else's argument, but you build it up out of straw so you can knock it down. Okay. This is how most people argue. They straw man. They're like, well, Travis said this is this, but obviously that's dumb. So that's a straw man argument. A Steelman argument is to give the other side the best possible, most gracious version of their argument. So how do we Steelman Zillow's argument?
Yeah.
So here's a few bullets, and then you tell me how you would Steelman.
Okay.
So from Zillow's perspective, private inventory harms consumers because they can't access it. Buyers can't see all available homes. Sellers lose exposure. And then smaller brokerages, like you said, are disadvantaged. And so MRED improperly used their MLS power to support Compass's strategy for world domination. So can you forget all that?
Yeah.
But with that in the backdrop, can you Steelman Zillow's position in this whole thing?
I can because, I mean, and we've had this conversation that if there wasn't a financial benefit to this, Zillow's argument looks really strong. That this is the best for buyers, this is the best for sellers. Why wouldn't we want all of the listings to be out so as many people can see that your property's for sale on the biggest portal that exists in the entire world, right? Like if this is where everyone goes, this is where you want it.
Very self-serving.
Yeah,
they happen to be that.
That they happen to be. And so, that's the piece where you're like,
that was terrible steel manning on my part.
Yeah, but from that perspective, like I can support what they're saying, and you and I can too, because we agree that a huge majority of the time, this is the best for the consumer on the buy side or the list side. And that I think is, if that's where it stopped, of this is the best for sellers because their property is exposed to the most amount of buyers. And then from the other side of this is best for buyers because they have the opportunity to know what's for sale that they otherwise might not, because of the agent that they have chosen to work with, because of the agent that they're in a buyer agreement with, because of, there's even fair housing implications. Zillow has a great argument there. But there's the underlying motive of Zillow really wants these listings on Zillow because they can then capture leads and sell those leads out. So Zillow has a self-serving reason.
Everyone does.
Yeah.
It's a business
model. As they
model,
should, yeah.
Right?
It's a business model that works very, very well for them.
Well, MRED and Compass have a business model too. So Steelman, I'm not going to call it Compass's position. I'm going to call it MRED's position, because the lawsuit was fundamentally between MRED and
right. So there's two.
Zillow.
Yeah. So Compass and Zillow are in a lawsuit.
Separate.
MRED and Zillow are in a lawsuit.
Well, in Compass's lawsuit with Zillow's gone very public, and Robert's sharing all sorts of stuff, but it's pretty damning stuff. I mean, some of that backstage correspondence inside of Zillow's corporate world was scary. Okay, but Steelman Compass's or MRED's position, sellers have marketing choices. Zillow is attempting to dictate MLS policy and imposing its own listing rules on the entire industry.
Yeah. As a company that's a marketing company that takes our information and uses it to procure leads and then sell those to whoever is willing to pay for those leads. And so from MRED's perspective, you're a user of our information. You should have to abide by the rules that we set because they're the rules that we set. And it's interesting from that perspective from MRED of sellers should get to choose, and we, as the people signing them into agreements, should get to have the conversations with them of what's best for them.
But again, bad job of steelmanning on my part. But if MRED I guess MRED is not complying with NAR's policies. It's complying with Compass's protocols. I was going to say if it's following its policies, it can do that independently of Zillow's independent choice to choose whether or not Zillow as a business model features those listings. I mean, can both things be true?
Both can be true. And so what's interesting is MRED's actually in compliance with NAR policy. But there's also this unique piece that says you can't pick and choose who you share your listings with unless they're not abiding by like the policies. And so, I mean, MRED's not an angel in this. They
I
changed
can't find an angel yet.
I haven't either. And that's what I said. This is where it's tough because both sides have things that are of benefit to the consumer. But both sides have arguments of this is very self-serving. They're businesses, right? Like Compass is a business, and that's part of their business model is this is what we offer for marketing. Zillow is a business, and part of their business, a big part of their business is we need as many listings as we possibly can because without listings, we don't really have a business anymore.
It's interesting, though, if I can put my 25 years in the real estate business realtor hat back on, which I've misplaced. It's pretty easy to remember back to a place where, I mean, Zillow just showed up one day.
Yeah.
And we all know the story. You know, Realtor.com was us, and then it wasn't us, and then all of a sudden there were feeds, and then there might as well be two sets of feeds. So now let's give it to Zillow too, and then Homes and whatever. And it all just happened. It happened very slowly. We got cooked in a pot that, you know, they just turned the heat up slowly. So, I mean, I can imagine a world where Zillow doesn't have access to all the listings. So yeah, it's. I guess I would say I really don't have a horse in this race.
Yeah, like, to be honest, the biggest issue is, and we've had this conversation even, you know, with agents in our offices, is that there is a good chance that your seller is going to expect that their property shows up on Zillow
Today.
Yep, today. Would they ever get to the point where they're like, I don't care that it's not on there? Maybe, but Zillow is still a pretty influential player when it comes to exposure of listings. But, you know, we've talked about it. They've been around a while. We keep thinking somebody else will jump in.
So was Yahoo Search.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, and again, that's not me to say I'm taking sides. I mean, I'm not a Zillow guy. I don't care for Zillow. I don't need Zillow. But I can see the argument. And maybe some of my pushback on this whole thing is just the way the whole thing's playing out.
I
don't need Zillow in my life, but I don't like the game that's being played and the way it's being played. But maybe there's no choice. I mean, maybe some things just need a blunt axe and blunt trauma to just break it apart so we can start with something clean
and rebuild. Maybe, you know, and and again, it comes back to the same conversation: is outside of our industry, is anybody even paying attention and caring? And if, you know, we're making a big deal and we're like, well, this looks ugly to the consumer, and, you know, are they trusting us? Did they care?
Okay, so quickly, this third one. So as a function of the fight between, I guess, clear cooperation and private listings philosophically, and then Zillow, MRED, and Compass, we've got this little portal war that's showing up now. Everybody seems to be jumping in bed with everybody else.
Yeah.
Even Realtor.com and Zillow jumped together. And then in the back of that, we've got ChatGPT, you've got Google. There's a complete... I don't even know how to describe this, but it's like everyone's creating coalitions in order to try to figure out how to exist, and because I think exist is the right word. It's not thrive. I think there's a game for survival going on here right now with all these portals to figure out who's going to survive this whole thing.
And to be honest, I think the alignment and the coalitions, the partnering, was an overreaction to Compass saying, hey, we have now partnered with Rocket and Redfin, and we're creating this separate access to our listings. So I think every franchise said, wait a minute, your point to exist, to retain agents and to recruit agents, we have to have something that we're aligned with, because if Compass has something, and then we think that, you know, EXP partners with Realtor.com, if everybody has some type of partnership, we better as well. And the part that's silly about all of this, you know, and it's going to continue to kind of fizzle, is that this just dealt, for the most part, with coming soon and previewing property, like showcasing properties before they are kind of able to be shown. And so this comes back to coming soon policies, right? So I have it listed, but nobody can show it yet. I'm in compliance with clear cooperation. So all of these franchises are trying to affiliate with some portal that's going to allow them to be their premier coming soon. And most people are like, we don't do coming soon that often. So what's this really about? It's about noise of every brokerage every franchise trying to have the best portal behind them. And in the end, you're like, this doesn't actually matter.
For what ultimate goal? To be able to win listing presentations?
To win listing presentations, to be, you know, and that's, again, like, Remax, KW, Home Services, all aligned with Zillow and said, yeah, like, we'll find a way to showcase our coming soon properties with you, Zillow. Well, nobody really cares, right? The consumer doesn't care when they go to the website.
I've heard nothing of that product since it was
there was a big noise about it. And that's the problem, is now you have all these portals that are trying to figure out how they continue to exist. So it's not just the franchises, but the portals, when Zillow is powerful, but they want to make sure that it doesn't become something that's so powerful that it forces them from existence.
The more I think about it, the more I just see a bunch of, it's like billiard balls bouncing around a table. It's just a bunch of reactions, because the companies did that too. Like C21, Cobalt, we all went and built PLNs
Yep.
They were all in the process of building out this infrastructure because
Right.
Compass had this infrastructure, and how do we compete with them when we have to list? That died out because we all got absorbed, and now it's happening on the portal stage.
Yeah. And a lot of this, unfortunately, becomes reactions to what's going on in the market. But by the time the tech is ready, the market has already shifted, and we know this. The market shifts pretty quickly, and so
Which is why we're standing not still, but it's why we're focusing on other things right now.
Because this doesn't matter. It's good to know what's taking place and how it came to be. But for the most part, agents, if they've got their head down and doing business, most of this is irrelevant. I think the bigger piece becomes the look into right now the referral side of these large the portals collecting consumer information and then selling it back, because it's not just.
Are you worried about being sued? You're not saying names.
Well, but I mean, but it's not just Zillow. No, but Zillow's very, very good at it. But Realtor.com does this, and we're like, well, wait a minute. Like, we are realtors, and they're selling it back to us. Well, yeah, because they're not owned by
so
us.
Does Cardis. So does,
for sure.
I mean, it's like everyone's doing it. So, but name this thing real quick, because you're actually moving to I didn't even have number 4, but let's just go to number 4.
Well, and because I think this becomes a bigger conversation as
I
think there's light shed on this.
Name this. So this is that there's now a probe going on, or a suggestion that there needs to be a probe from lawmakers into real estate referrals.
Right.
And really what that means is what I said, and I think I'm correct about this, is that just means, I'll name Zillow, but it could be Realtor.com as well. It means these broker portals, they're not brokerages. They're really just marketing platforms that have the information, but they've become brokers in order to validate legally the capacity to charge referral fees for their acquisition of leads. Agents are buying those leads no longer by way of dollars, but by referral fees. And they're suggesting that the probe would be that there's a lack of transparency to the consumer.
Yes.
Who, by way of the fact that this receiving agent is being charged 30 to 40% referral fees on this, that's a blind upcharge on the cost to do business for this consumer. Yes?
Yes.
And that's pretty freaking massive, because what I said to you when you shared that with me is that's declaring war by. Now, this hasn't happened yet, but that would be declaring war on Zillow's business model.
It is
part of Realtor.com, et cetera.
Yep. And that's where it gets interesting, because really that is the alignment piece in all of this. When we talk about why are all these franchises aligning with portals, because they want to find the best way to get as many of their leads back for the cheapest amount of money, right? So when we align with you as the portal, how do we get as many of those leads that you're capturing back? Because, for it is what it is. Zillow captures an incredible amount of buyer information, and brokerages want that. Franchises want that because it helps for retention, it helps for recruitment, it helps for production. And so now we have lawmakers that are requesting that the Federal Trade Commission looks into the transparency and our consumers understanding when they click the contact agent button, what that actually means.
Which is a pretty legitimate argument. I mean, that is problematic.
It is problematic, and I think there's it kind of waterfalls down. I think there's bigger pieces to that, because and I'm intrigued to see the data on this, but do agents that receive referrals charge a higher rate to those referrals than they do to other clients, because those clients aren't being referred, right? So if I get somebody that's just in my sphere of influence, but I get somebody where I have to pay back a 30 or 40% referral fee to this referring company, do I maybe charge those clients?
I feel like that's noise.
I don't know that it is. I think we would be surprised
What if the data shows that there is no upcharge? Should it matter?
Then I don't know that it matters.
Well, why? Well, of course it should matter. I still think it matters. The fact that they're still charging 3 doesn't, surely.
Oh, you're saying, does it matter that we disclose it?
It matters that we disclose.
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry.
I'm suggesting that this isn't an issue only if these agents charge more.
Got it.
It's an issue because there's a lack of transparency from the consumer. And if they were aware that there was a 30 to 40% referral fee, and that the people that they were being directed to are not the best agents, but the agents that are willing to pay. Sometimes they're the best, sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
That's just an issue of a structural system that creates a layer of non-transparency. I'm that level of antitrust oversight, I'm for, because I do think that at the end, the consumer should win. I'm a consumer. Every day I buy things. And any space that I buy things where there's layers, where I have to negotiate with this guy on my car, but he's going to go walk into another room to negotiate with the guy that's actually doing the negotiating. I don't like that system because it's rigged against me. Yeah. So I'd rather have a system where I can talk to the guy that's actually selling me the car. This is similar to that to me.
Yeah.
Is that a valid?
Yeah, that's actually a really good analogy of it. And so, yeah, so it's not that, no, I do think that part still matters, but I think from the FTC standpoint,
you think they need that evidence?
They need data to actually show that there is damage.
They didn't need it for the previous round. Nothing changed on agent commissions, and we complete upheaval of the entire industry over the last 4 years, and there was no data demonstrating that people were being charged more as a function of a lack of buyer's agency contracts. They still pulled that plug.
But I mean, there was data though, right?
What was that?
Properties, because you used to be able to see what you were getting paid and you were guaranteed to get that. They had data that showed that properties,
But the average commission hasn't gone down at all.
No, it hasn't. But I was saying they had data to at least say, hey, this needs to be investigated.
I think they had speculation. They had a theory that it was creating upcharging.
Yes, and I think that's what's happening now is there's a theory that
this will be harder to show than the previous one, because the previous one, there was no way to demonstrate that it actually made properties worth 3% more. You just had to throw speculation at it, and it seemed valid. But with this, there is an objective way to demonstrate whether or not those referral sales actually have higher net commissions.
That's going to be pretty easy to
I don't think they'll find that. But
I'm intrigued. I don't know.
I know that we have anecdotal.
I was just saying internally, no. I don't think that's a case. But have I talked to agents? And again, this isn't just a Zillow thing, because this will also look at relocation companies. Have I talked to agents that when they have to do a 40% referral back to a relocation company,
they're less willing to negotiate?
They're less willing to come down on that, as they should have the right to do that. But also in the fine print, that relocation company makes sure that it's very clear. You cannot tell the client that you are paying us back and that there is an amount of money that you're paying us, right? So
how is that valid?
That's part of, I think, what is going to become even more eye-opening for people is that language is concerning.
Well, and I would be interested in that language, which I presume I can go find, as it relates to ZillowRealtor.com leads as well, because I think there is prohibitions embedded into those agreements that do stipulate how much agents can or cannot discuss the referral fees. Yep. So that's going to be damning on these organizations down the line.
It is, and that's I think, even if the FTC goes nowhere with it, it's creating conversations within state legislatures even. So DOJ hasn't even jumped in, and you've got states that are passing laws that state, and it's existed in Iowa's law, but it's pretty gray. Does a company like Zillow have to have a form signed that says, we are Zillow, we're Zillow brokerage, we're referring you to this agent, here is the amount that they're going to pay us back as a result of this? Technically, it's already required by state law, but it's
never really.
But it's not enforced because it's very gray on how that needs to be enforced. If this leads to that enforcement, that's going to affect those, anyone that does lead capture.
I think Zillow's headquarters is going to get a little smaller.
Maybe. The thing is, Zillow has evolved pretty well over the last 15 years. This is big.
That's a big one.
This is a big one. But at the same time, Zillow did what we knew, like our national association should have been doing, 20 years ago, is creating something that gets our, so again, it's.
I defended them all through the years. I remember realtors, I'm just going to say the word bitching about Zillow and how Zestimates suck and Zestimates this. And I'm like, guys, they're providing the consumer with what the consumer wants. And you're like, we've got the data, we've got the information. I'm like, that's all great, but it's highly defensive. They've given the consumer a quick, easy, accessible, bite-sized. No one cares about the actual accuracy. They want access to information that they don't have to sign a contract with you for or show up at your office for. So I've defended them over the years. Right now, though, some of this back dialogue that I've seen between them and whoever, it sure seems like they've become somewhat monopolistic. There's a better way to say that. Monopolistic.
I like it.
So I'm fascinated to see where that plays out. But there's one more than I just saw very, very recently. It looks like an antitrust review of CIH as well. Compass.
Yeah,
Did you see that recently?
That just last week, Attorney General for State of New York is now coming back and opening this back up because it had been.
It went through the federal level of scrutiny, which all of these big mergers need to go through. They got the green light, and now some state level judge is saying, "Wait, I'm going to open this up."
So state level Attorney General, because it comes back to the proper protocol and timelines. Because if you remember, we had conversations of, you know what, this is going to be months, if not a year down the road.
Was proper due diligence done, or did this get rubber stamped by someone?
Did someone pull a favor? And I think that's the conversations being had, because I remember when
Who's the favor by? Who did the favor?
I think someone did a favor for Compass.
Who's the someone? Like, how high does that go?
That goes to our U.S. Attorney General's office that oversees this. And wow. I mean, Wall Street Journal did an article on it when it happened, because they're like, normally this is something that would take 6 to 9 months.
It did just show up.
And it took weeks, because I remember we had a meeting and we're like, whoa, this is big news. And we had the conversation like, hey guys, this is going to be 6 to 12 months before this even gets through approval with.
And one day there was
the Federal Trade Commission of, is this going to violate any type of antitrust? And it was very short time later. You count it in days, where we're like, oh, this is happening, and it's happening in a month. And that was interesting. And so I think that piece of it, again, we're an industry that has a lot of money tied into it. And so we're a target pretty regularly, both, at the brokerage level,
the largest
association.
Trade association that's ever existed.
Yep. But even, when you look at the amount of money any major franchise does, you're talking billions of dollars that go through in a year. Obviously they're going to be scrutinized, and they're going to be in the targets of class action attorneys. The problem is there's lots of other industries that are also.
It does feel like real estate's had a very difficult to explain target on its back for the last 10 years.
Yep. And I remind everybody, like, Google does too, and Google has paid out a lot of money in fines, and Apple has paid out a lot of money in fines. It's just interesting here because there's so many of us, right? When you think of how many realtors there are, and again, we make noise. And so that's, I think, what's interesting is there's too many people talking too much on social media, where sometimes they just need to sit back and let decisions be made and just do your work.
Well, I might argue that our industry, our brokers, we're complicit. And I don't think it's in the ways that people suggest we're complicit. I don't think there's a cabal. I don't think that I've been involved in a lot of MLSs. I don't think there's no one with horns, tails, like strategizing to keep, it's all pretty above board. I think the way we're complicit is that we're just not that bloody good at what we do. And I think that if agents were properly trained, if there was proper accountability, if we held the standards to the way we do as an organization, I think, and even we struggle, it's hard work.
It's still hard.
Independent contractors, right? But I think if we raise the bar, then the problem is, one, our standards are too low, and number two, agents make really, really good money when they do transact.
Yeah.
And so that creates a significant amount of scrutiny, because great agents are worth every penny of what they're earning.
Absolutely.
But if 80% of the industry sells 1 to 2 houses a year or less, they're probably not that good at what they're doing, and they're earning the same amount per transaction. Right. So the scrutiny comes in where it's like,
it should be.
There's a percentile of people's largest assets. And that just has a natural target on its back, because it's a very, that's an easy headline to attack.
Yeah. And it does make sense that, regardless of how great you are at the job, transaction to transaction, you're going to be pretty similar on what you're charging. And so I understand when DOJ raises flags on that, why people listen, because I think that part is real. And brokers don't hold their agents accountable, and we have a lot of people in this industry that shouldn't be. And so, and they stay because it only takes one now with the prices that they're selling, 1 or 2 transactions a year.
I think they stay because brokers let them stay.
Yeah. And because they can sell one house and pay all their bills and make a little bit of money on it.
I don't know that I blame agents that are in that space. They have a full-time job. They have a license. It's easy to get the license. It's hard for me to point fingers at them selling their one house a year. It's easy for me to look at the for me, it's easy at the broker level, probably because it's where I live, and I can say, look, I get it. I get that you want those 80 people, each of which do one sale. Well, that's 80 sales, and that all adds up. I get it, but that's a short game.
Right.
I think we have to recognize that it's a privilege to, I say it over and over again, it's a privilege to do what we do. Great agents really get to earn significant amounts of revenue, doing something beautiful and providing a massive value add to society. Keeps wanting to have people represent them in these transactions. That's self-evident at
over and
point.
over. Yeah.
Regardless of all this change that we've thrown at this thing, nothing's changed. They're happy to sign buyer's agency agreements and work with trusted professionals. But that's a privilege that I think we take for granted, and I think brokerages need to step up. So I don't know, I'm preaching.
No, you're right on.
Okay, look, I've covered almost all the topics. The only one I didn't touch was dual agency, and I don't know, that really is more super quick. What's happened in the last 6 months on dual agency as a debate?
So again, we can name names on this one because Zillow released a report just, again, within the last 10 days attacking dual agency and releasing data in which tried combing through it and
but
still,
really, that's not an attack on dual agency. It's an attack on Compass's PLN, isn't it?
Well, it's yes and. So it's an attack on the PLN. It's also an attack just to reinforce the fact, their data came out and said sellers on average across the United States and all of the data we have when it's dual agency, on average, they spread it out over all of these listings, make $2,000 less per, keep $2,000 less per transaction when it's dual agency. And as I said, combing through the data is messy.
How's that damning? What does that suggest?
Well, so they're suggesting that they're making less because when you're a dual agent, you care less about negotiating on behalf of the sellers because you're just trying to get the deal done to get both sides.
Who's making less? The agent or the
seller keeps less. So they're saying,
less.
So not agents keeping $2,000 less, sellers pocket $2,000 less. And so they release this, and everybody's like, why now? This is a really weird thing to be releasing. Well, they also want to remind people that Zillow tends to not give the listings back to the listing agent. They give them to buyer's agents that then have their best interest in mind, not the sellers and listing agents. So that's where their play is on this. Is
good golly.
Right? And so interesting time to release that when everybody's like, this seems like an odd thing to throw out right now.
Yeah.
This is just Zillow reminding, when it's dual agency, you seller aren't coming out ahead because...
You ever have a friend, they're a couple, and they used to come over and hang out at your house, drink wine, no names, and then they got divorced. And then you look at their social media feed, and it's like each of them passively throwing crap at each other.
Yeah, and neither one,
names.
Yeah, and neither one is the hero.
Well, that's a little bit of how this looks, because I've seen a lot of posts from both sides here flinging mud. And I just feel like there's just a lot of mud on the walls.
Yeah, there is. So. And especially, and again, it's our conversation we had when we started this. Most of this is stuff our agents don't even need to worry about, need to think about, need to have them affect them in any capacity. And yet there's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, it's across social media. It's getting picked up by national news channels and publications just talking about the disaster that is the real estate industry right now. And that doesn't help us.
So I hear almost nothing practical at this point. So today, instructions to our troops on the ground. I mean, it really is just keep your head out of this noise for the most part.
And keep communicating with your client. I mean, over-communicate with your clients, right? If they
our
are
clients today aren't asking a lot of questions about this stuff. What would the questions be that might come up?
And it's not even this, but we do have clients that, and we've had this conversation, that sometimes don't actually want their property out to everybody. Yep. Right? So what are our options? We do have options, and they're in compliance with your local MLS and the National Association. And, so there are times where this is in the best interest of the seller to not have it blasted out there for whatever reason they choose. And also,
there's multiple options at this point.
Yeah, there's lots of options, and that's where you talk to us, you talk to your brokers. But also, we're still pretty well aligned that the best thing possible is to get that property out there and do what's best for your seller, and that's entertain an offer from anybody that's willing to bring you a great one with great terms.
So I don't know when we do this again, but it feels like the next time we do this, it better be with something
that's actually happened.
Something that we can do.
Yeah.
It was crazy how quick and fun it was moving through what felt like one of the craziest transitions you could ever imagine in real estate, which was 2 years now?
2024, yeah.
And that felt practical. This is almost annoying in that there's nothing we can do today. There's nothing we need to do. It's great because we're selling well. Our agents are in a great space. It's more that there's this churn going on, and we're sort of like watching and waiting for when we need to take action. And it might be that all this fizzles out. I asked ChatGPT the other day how it sees this playing out.
Yeah.
And it was actually a relatively interesting answer.
That would be interesting.
I don't even care.
We don't
to
need to dig
share
into it. But that would, yeah.
It basically suggested mostly fizzling out of the whole thing. But I guess we'll see. So for now, anything else you want to close with for our agents to be thinking about?
Like I said, I think the biggest piece is the communication piece, because we have had agents that have been like, hey, do I need to pay attention to this? Like, glad you're asking. No, if it's something that we are concerned, we'll communicate it to you. And if you have questions, like at any point, ask. Most of this stuff is just noise that's not going to affect your business in any capacity.
I'm glad you're out just listening to all the noise. That's terrific.
I bet you enjoy that. I do.
Well, I'm interested to see that article. You mentioned a good article from Mike Simonson.
Yeah.
I want to read
Founder
that.
of Altos, to just gave a perspective that I didn't have on the 3-phase and the seller choice, because I've been kind of anti Compass's stance on this, and we've had conversations of like, hey, like shouldn't brokerages and sellers at least get to have that option? I'm like, yeah, but it's not right for the public. And this article was very well put together of but like, think of it from this perspective, and it was great. So
I've never made a good Switzerland. I have always been very opinionated. I've got to be honest. For the first time in my life, I really feel like it's safe to be to be Swiss right now.
Let it happen. And stay out of the way.
Okay, well, thanks for your efforts on this, guys. If you have questions, obviously let us know.
Anytime.
But I think the most important thing right now is keep your head down, do what you're already doing. I love where we're at as a team and an organization. Absolutely. And we've got the right idea about how to serve clients. So appreciate your time, Travis.
Thank you.
Yep.